how to deal with weeds. So in this first part, I'm going to talk about some of the prominent Kentucky weeds. So the first one is crabgrass. Crabgrass is a spreading non-native weed, and it spreads both above ground and underground. Next we have creeping Charlie. It spreads above ground, and it is odorous, and it is not native. Next we have dandelions. They have airborne seeds, that's how they spread, and they're not native. And one of their key features is they look really out of place. That's why people don't really like them they don't like them in their lawns, because you look at it and say, oh, the big old yellow flower, or the white puff. Next we have English ivy. It's an invasive plant, and it is not native to Kentucky. And then we have bush honeysuckle. So bush honeysuckle is invasive and it is also not native. It has prominence in Kentucky's forests. However, vining honeysuckle is not. So we do have some honeysuckle here that is native. Next we have morning glory. It's a vining plant, and it is native to Kentucky. However, it has a lot of prominence in field crops. It can grow up like corn stalk. It sort of lowers the quality of your crop. Next we have nutsedge, and it is a grass, and it is not native. It's like the lime green grass. And then we have kudzu. It's vining, it's invasive, and it is not native. And it also very prominent in Kentucky's forests, or more what was Kentucky's forest, as it basically smothers whatever plant is currently there, and it kills lots of trees. And it can grow like a ton in just one day. So to combat some of these, we have weed controls. That's what I'll be talking about in the second part. So some weed control measures you can use are chemical weed control. You can wire weed, or you can use mulches. There's a couple others, but these are what I find to be the most prominent. I've done some math in this following part, and I used an area of 200 feet by 200 feet as a market garden with 36-inch beds and 18-inch walkways, just so I could get, some rough numbers on how much stuff will cost. First, I'm going to start with chemical. Some pros and cons of chemicals. They're cheap and quick. However, they have tons of cons. They're harmful, they're a health hazard, they're not organic, so you can't market your stuff as organic, which means you'll be able to get less money for your produce or crops. And you may have to meet runoff requirements, and there's a good chance of residual weed if whoever's spraying it misses a couple spots. So the chemical is obviously very cheap. That's why a lot of places use it. So that costs $4.50 to spray twice, which is how much you'd likely need to do if you're using it in a market garden. The labor cost would be $27.50. That's basically a person walking up and down, spraying half the bed at a time. And that is for doing it twice a year. So the total cost for that is $32. So some other chemicals, other than, I calculated that one for a couple other types of chemicals. Sedge hammer, which specifically helps kill nutsedge and some other grasses. And then there's also Roundup. Some differences are the preen is applied after the desired plants have started growing, like the plants you want, your crop. And it kills most weeds, but not all. I believe it does not kill nutsedge. And then we have sedge hammer, which is applied after the desired plants have started growing, like preen, but it kills nutsedge. So there's a good chance you may have to apply both if you have a problem with something that's killed by one of the others. So that would raise the cost by another $4.50, so not much again. And then we have Roundup, which kills everything, so it must be applied before the desired plants are planted. And then you have to wait about a month or so. So what that does is it shortens your growing season. Next we have wire weeding. This is my personal favorite as it's the least invasive and it's more organic. The pros of it are that it is organic, it's not harmful, and when you do this and you do it well and regularly, as I have calculated on the next slide, there's almost zero weeds left. And there are almost no cons of this other than it is one of the more expensive options. But if you're not paying someone and you're doing labor of doing the wire weeding yourself, and it's not a very labor intensive thing, you're going to save yourself a ton of money. So for a small market gardener, if you're just one person doing that, or maybe you have one employee, then this is most certainly the option for you because it's very cheap in that case, since you're not actually paying someone a wage for that. So the cost of it, you have to buy a wire weeder, which is only sold by one company, and it's very expensive. So it's $129 for a basic one. You can pay $60, but you don't get the handle. So the labor for that, though, if you're paying someone, and I calculated all these labor costs, I calculate them all at $15 an hour as a base, unless I otherwise specify. So for this presentation, it's just everything's $15 an hour. So that would be $2,475. That's because with wire weeding, you have to go through every garden bed and weed the entire thing every day, which prevents weeds from growing. but it does take time, but that's really it. It doesn't take much effort at all. And then the total cost for that would be $2,604. Lastly, I have mulch. Some of the pros of mulches is that it prevents weeds. If you use wood chips, which is what I've calculated the prices on the next slide only with, so you can get it for free because you can go to a tree care company, and if you're willing to take enough of the wood chips, they're more than willing to go and dump it on wherever you want it, as long as you're within a close enough distance, because it costs them money to dump it somewhere else. The only issue with that, though, is that it's dubiously organic, because you don't know who or where that tree that was shredded and turned into wood chips came from. So that may be organic, or it may not, or it could have had a disease or something like that. It may not be organic, and it is not as harmful as chemical. The cons, though, there are expensive labor costs, because it's going to take more than just one person or two people. It's going to take quite a few people, significant time, to lay out that mulch. And if you want to get it done within just a couple hours and not have it take weeks, also you're going to have to do that probably twice a year. And then at the end of the year, you're going to have to remove the mulch, so that way you can plant something in the bed again if you're doing something like lettuce. Which in that case, mulch would almost certainly not be your option unless you have some really weird scenario. And also, one of the cons too is that it's questionable quality. So the cost for wood chips as a mulch is $0 for the wood chips themselves. The labor is $330, and I believe that is doing it twice a year. But that does not include removal, so you might end up more in the $500 range there. But I had the total cost of $330. So some other mulches for some scope. I also put the impression that people get from these mulches, or at least what I've heard from a decent amount of people on here as well. Wood chips, I call it the end-all be-all because it's free. Cypress mulch is another option. It is becoming increasingly popular. Both myself and other people have called one of the most aesthetically pleasing, and it is becoming increasingly popular. Both myself and other people have called one of the most aesthetically pleasing mulches and a more natural landscape. So then we have dyed mulch. I find dyed mulch to be used really for people who are kind of stubborn, people who don't really want change, and they've used or had dyed mulch all their life, and that's what they want to use still. I find very few people who seek out dyed mulch as a design choice. Then we have pea gravel. This is my favorite gravel. I like to use it in walkways. However, it can be used as a mulch as well. A lot of people find it aesthetically pleasing, but it is expensive. Rock is more expensive than wood, obviously. We also have heavy gravel, and a lot of people find that to look cheap and tacky. So it's not a very good option. We also have lava rock. Lava rock is, to myself and many other people, found to look sort of zero maintenance, and it is low maintenance as with all gravels, but it just doesn't really look super great. Another problem with all rock mulch alternatives is some plants will not grow well unless they're already a fairly large plant, because rock, when hit by sunlight, it absorbs the heat and radiates that back out. So if your rock is going right up to the base of some of your plants, that might be too much heat for the plant if it's a sort of arid or less mild climate. And that might cause those plants to die or not grow very well. So for some prices, wood chips you can get for free if you can talk on the phone, basically. Cypress costs about $7.97, about $8. Dyed mulch, it costs about $4.30. Now, with these rock options, I was unable to find bagged versions of these as I was with the top, so I had to use a bulk dividend to get the same amount as the other ones. However, this has caused the prices to be way out of whack. The bulk dividends are a much lower price because they don't have as high of a markup on them. The bulk dividend of the pea gravel was $1.40. The bulk dividend of the heavy gravel was also $1.40. And the bulk dividend of the lava rock was $12.74. And I forgot to mention, all of these are for 2 cubic feet of material. These were my sources. Thank you for watching.